Solidarity.
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 Come on, you're in church now. Solidarity.
Solidarity.
That's right. Welcome to our International Workers' Day program for Grand Rapids 2026. We have a few thank yous. First, I'd like to start by thanking Fountain Street Church and Reverend Nathan Dannison, right over here, and Cassie Beach, who helped us to organize with the church. Also, Cale Clements and Oscar, the sound guy. We also use Swift Print to print our flyers to do outreach, a good union shop, and next time we'll get the union bug on the flyer. I also want to thank our Grand Rapids Mayday Committee, which Ivan and myself are the chairs of. On that committee, we have Jamie Strauss of the Grand Rapids Education Association. Where's Jamie? Somewhere. All right. We have Karsten from the he works with the stagehand sometimes. Karsten with the Musicians Union, you just heard. We also have Tyler Henderson, who works at GRCC and is in the union over there. Nick Haima with the Industrial Workers of the World. Shout out to Nick. And finally, Tom Niebuhr of AFSCME, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, who you'll hear speak later. Thank you, Tom. I also want to thank my sisters and brothers and kinfolk from the Stagehands Union over here and over there. Give yourselves a round of applause. On our committee, we have Trey Brockett, Kayla Young, and Jonah Potter. Thank you, guys. All right, so May Day is a historic day around the world where people in almost every major city, and even in small ones like ours, come out and march and rally and hold picnics and festivals to celebrate the workers of the world and the power that we hold in our hands. In places like Cuba, you have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people marching, including someone from Grand Rapids who's there, Jessica Plickta, who you all saw go viral when the police arrested her for leading a Palestine protest in this city. Yeah. And we've brought this tradition back to Grand Rapids for the last 4 or 5 years, and we're very happy this year to do it inside Fountain Street and have a very important political candidate, Abdul El-Sayed, who's running for U.S. Senate, to join us later. So the Haymarket Martyrs died for us. They died for the working class in Chicago back in the 1880s. There were factories that were on strike, and the police were sent to bust up those picket lines and those strikes. And there was a rally in downtown Chicago. You've all driven by it. If you've been in Chicago, probably didn't know it. And there's a monument there today. But the police came and busted up a workers' rally. And then the robber barons, the people we call billionaires today, they hung the workers who led that protest and some of the important labor writers of the time. And that's who the labor martyrs, the Haymarket Martyrs, are today. And it's celebrated all over the world. I was once in a union hall in Columbia with 40 other Americans. And when they found out I was from Chicago, they made me get up and speak, just because the Haymarket Martyrs are on the walls of every union hall in that country. That's how important it is to other people around the world, and we're bringing it home to us. The struggle that came out of that was for the 8-hour day, and today we're still fighting for the 8-hour day, either to get enough hours so you don't have to work 2 or 3 jobs, or to not have to work forced overtime. So we need to continue that struggle even today. As you well know, the prices of gas have skyrocketed with Trump's war on Iran. We need to defeat this war of Trump's and shut it down. You're going to see the price of food creep up pretty quickly here. Maybe it's not creeping, maybe it's moving fast, as well as rent and health care. And there's only one way that we're going to stop this, and that's by organizing bigger and bigger rallies like the No Kings rallies to take Trump down. We have to build movements. Our solution to making change is to build the labor movement and then join the labor movement as it grows with the other movements that oppressed people face. The movement for immigrant rights, the movement for Black Lives Matter, the environmental movement, the women's liberation movement, the LGBTQ struggle. We have to build a united front of all these forces. Elections are part of this struggle, but the main thing we need to do, the solution I'm advocating, is that we build the labor and people's movements to shut down all the politicians, to take the power into the working people's hands and take it away from the billionaires. And we have good examples of that, not just the George Floyd movement, where 25 million people participated in marches around the country, including in big cities and small towns. But more recently, we have the movement against ICE. We shut ICE down. That's right. It began with the movement in LA, where people took to the streets immediately holding marches. Then Trump sent National Guard troops into DC, where they still are on the streets, and there's still people going out every week to protest the presence of the National Guard troops. It moved to Portland, where there's an ICE detention center that the city council, even with progressive politicians on it, refuses to shut down the ICE detention center. They could vote it out of existence through their city council, but the movement has to build up strong enough to force the politicians' hands. Portland's a progressive place. In some ways, it's a city a lot like Grand Rapids, if you've ever been there. But we need movements that strengthen and grow to shut it down. Finally, Trump moved to Minneapolis. While he was met with great resistance, the ICE thugs took to the streets and thought they could push everyone around. They killed Good, and a few weeks later, they executed Preddy on the streets there. There are martyrs for us today in our movement. But when we build the movement to defend immigrants, to stand with immigrants and their families, and we're able, our friends in Minneapolis, our trade union comrades in Minneapolis, mobilized 100,000 people to the streets to shut down ICE. That's how we win. We want a different democracy than what the politicians think they can buy and sell. We want a participatory democracy that we build together and demand and expand the rights for all people and get rid of the oppressions they face today. We need politicians who are not bought and sold. And there's other countries that have electoral systems and protagonistic democracies where this happens, where money doesn't decide who's in office, but people's power decides. So I'm going to close out and have Ivan talk to you, but I just want to say, you know, the Republicans hate us. Yeah, surprise, I know. And you know what? We can defeat them. The Democrats, I always say to our union meetings, they like to break our hearts. They come and talk nice to us, they make promises, and then they don't deliver on what we ask for. But if we can build a strong movement, go back to the days of the mega marches in 2006, when immigrant rights really became forward on the agenda. If we can build the type of movement like the Black Lives Matter movement and build organizations in the wake of that that continue to struggle like some of the people you'll hear today, we can win and we can get Trump out. 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 Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Ivan Diaz. As Tom mentioned, I'm running for Michigan's 29th State Senate District, and I'm a former Kent County Commissioner, but I'm not gonna talk to you all about my political campaign. Today, this weekend, is Mayday, and we're here specifically for workers and immigrants' rights. A couple of years ago, I was working for the largest credit union in the States. I'm not gonna mention the name, but you probably know which one it is. So that's all I'll say about that. I was working there for years as a loan officer. I worked my way up from being a teller to being a loan officer, working with people's finances, opening bank accounts, going through the credit card applications, their personal loan applications. I worked there for years. And over time, I started noticing certain things that didn't sit quite right with me. I noticed that we didn't have materials in other languages for people to read and understand. Even though I worked at the branch on, there's a clue, I guess, on Division between 44th Street and 36th Street, which is the most diverse branch in the area. I noticed that those of us who were bilingual or multilingual weren't paid for those skills. We were pulled away from our daily job duties so that we could interpret for other departments like mortgages and investments. Things that, frankly, we had no business doing because we weren't trained in those materials. And over time, I brought those concerns to my colleagues, and everybody pretty much felt the same way, that we were underpaid, that we were deemed essential workers during the pandemic, but yet we weren't treated like essential employees by our employer. And eventually, we kept pushing management to try and address some of these things. It got to the point, though, where one day, our district manager came into my office, closed the door, and sat down, and essentially said to me, I agree with you. I agree with your concerns. I've brought it up to the people above me, but frankly, it's out of my hands. There's nothing else I can do. And so I said, okay, thank you. And the very next day, I'm pretty sure that very evening, I contacted my colleagues and I said, the district manager said that there's nothing else that she can do. I think it's time that we unionize and fight for our rights. And so that's exactly what we did. At the end of 2022, myself and our small team, there was about 13 of us, we publicly said that we were going to be unionizing, creating, this is, I guess, another hint, the LMCUWA, and unionizing with the CWA. And so we had a vote. The vote passed in early January of 2023. So we did create the union successfully. And about a month later, the first credit union, labor union in our country's history, by the way. Right here in Grand Rapids. Right here in Grand Rapids. And about a month or so after we won that vote, our assistant manager got fired. And she was told, and this was somebody who I had known since middle school, so I knew her pretty well. And she said that she had been fired because her values no longer aligned with the company's values. About a week or so after that, I was fired. And I was told that I was fired because I had violated policy. Now, in case you didn't know, many of our laws are severely not modernized. They were passed decades, generations, even centuries ago. And that's the same thing when it comes to national labor law. If you win a union, that's great. But if you don't have a signed contract within a year, the employer can force what's called a decertification vote, where they force another vote to get rid of the union. And that's exactly what happened. The employer forced another vote, and it was tied. It was 5-5. But because we didn't have a majority, that meant that the union lost. And my 5 coworkers who all voted to keep the union quit that very same day. This is just one story among many. I'm sure probably everybody in this room can stand up and tell us stories about the things that they've experienced in their workplaces, how their rights have been violated. maybe feeling too scared to fight back or to stand up for their own rights. And that's exactly the society that we live in today, where our politicians are bought off by corporations, where people have to create GoFundMe accounts to get the health care that they deserve, that they already paid for, where 10 years ago, when I graduated from high school, a certain Bernie Sanders was talking about a $15 minimum wage, and we still don't have a $15 minimum wage today. I don't know about you all, but I don't want to be standing here in another decade and still talking about how we have people dying on the streets because they didn't get the health care that they deserve. So again, this weekend, we're talking about workers and immigrants' rights. And we know that immigrants are, if we think about it, probably the community that is least protected in our society. Because people from various communities, as long as you're a citizen, you have access to a lot of resources. But if you're an immigrant, if you're an asylum seeker, you're out of luck. And it's those very same people, those immigrants communities, who are essential to the survival of our country. They pick the food that we eat. They oftentimes work in healthcare, taking care of our elders and our kids. But immigrants, the immigrant story isn't just about the work that they do, because that's often where the conversation remains. And while that's important, immigrants' rights are important because they're human rights. And when any of our rights are under attack, we're all under attack. Eight years ago, when we were getting ready to elect our next governor, this is after the political establishment stole the election from Bernie Sanders in 2016. And if you're curious about why that is or how that happened, come find me afterward and I'll explain how that happened. We learned about another man from right here in Michigan who was running for office. His name was Abdul El-Sayed. And Abdul El-Sayed was running on raising wages and on universal health care and on fighting back against the political establishment and the machine back then. And he didn't win, he came in second place. But he showed us that when you stick by your values, when you fight for what's right, you may not win the first time, and you may not win the second time. But if you keep at it, and if you keep talking to people like yourselves and bringing them into rooms like this, the possibility of us winning increases every single time. To the point where, I'm about to end, but very quickly, raise your hand if you were at the Michigan Democratic Party convention a couple weekends ago. If y'all weren't there, the reception that Abdul received in that room raised my hopes to really believe that this year, our next United States Senator is going to be a senator that believes and fights for Medicare for all, that fights against needless wars and genocide, and who is going to fight for the people in this room, not the DeVos and Van Andels who have their names all over the buildings around the city. So thank you all for being here. And we'll be passing it to Tom to talk about who's next. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'd like to welcome up the representatives from the Grand Rapids Education Association. Noemi Tobar Arellano, a longtime union representative and newly retired. Congratulations. Also, Lucas Southwell, who's a rep, and Caitlin Homewood, special education representative. Come on up.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to have been invited. I stand here as a proud daughter of a migrant worker, Felipe Tovar, a true hero. He was my hero. I called him my teddy bear. And I'm here because of him. The times in which we are living have affected me in a very personal way. As a public school teacher, I witnessed the devastation caused by current policies. You know which ones I'm talking about. My students' families have been torn apart by ICE. In September of 2025, I was startled by the cries of one of my students as she arrived to school. Her father had been detained the night before. She kept on saying, he was going to work and the men took him. This moment lit a fire inside of me, and I reached out to my union, the GREA, which fully funded a program to bring comfort to these students that have been affected by ICE. Each student got a bag and all comfort things, a warm blanket, stress toys, a $20 gift card to Myers so they could buy themselves some pajamas. Pajamas are a luxury for a lot of people. That's why I hate pajama day at school, because I know, people struggle with that. It's just a small way that I found that students could get comfort. Another family in my school had their single mother detained and sent to the facility in northern Michigan, and she had 3 children under 4th grade age. So she had a pre-kindergartner, a kindergartner, and a 4th grade student. Her sister, who was also a single parent, had 2 children, went from 2 kids to 5 kids overnight. So she was sleeping on the floor so the kids could sleep in beds. This is what ICE has been doing to our students. So when I heard those cries, I told myself, I hate this country. This country is causing so much trauma. So the trauma is caused to the student, the families, but also the teachers, the principals. Our school was like, we were in mourning. And everybody, was trying to find resources. There's not a lot of resources out there. ICE Rapid Response did help the first family. They self-deported, and their brilliant children had to leave Grand Rapids Public Schools. And I like to say that Abdiel, he was the kind of kid that would count ants at recess instead of playing soccer. He would sing at recess time. He would show up to school in a 3-piece suit on any given day, just to, his church clothes. And I believe that he probably could have cured cancer, but instead, they're back in Guatemala. They were having a very difficult time getting them in school there because they didn't have the proper documentation. So his parents fled the country for many reasons, and they had to go to a country they had never been to. I get goosebumps when I think about how they're doing. I'll leave you with this. All of us can help in some way. The easiest way to do it is to mentor someone in your neighborhood, at your church. If you see somebody asking for money for a family, the need is very real. In my 32 years of teaching in Grand Rapids Public Schools, last year was by far the hardest. And I think we all could help. So thank you. Have a nice evening.
As you guys have heard tonight, we live in horrific times. Times when children are indiscriminately bombed and killed, times when people are shot in the streets for fighting for the rights of others, times when, as you've heard, me and my colleagues have to console crying children because their families have been unjustly and cruelly torn apart and destroyed. I'm an English teacher. I use literature to help my students learn about and understand the world. My favorite series is Lord of the Rings. I think of a quote from that book where Frodo, the protagonist, is dealing with trying to overcome the responsibility he feels to fight the tyranny going on. And he says, "I wish it need not have happened in my time," said Frodo. "So do I," said Gandalf, "and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." And as we go out there today and think about what we have to do in the time that's been given us, I do want to remind everyone we live in horrific times, but we do not live in unprecedented times. This has been a centuries-long struggle. Our comrades in the past were fighting. We will keep fighting. Our comrades in the future will continue the fight for us. I think of the history of my own country. I am American, I'm also Brazilian. We suffered a military dictatorship from the 60s into the 80s, supported and funded by the CIA through Operation Condor. The discrimination of the US government against our Latino brothers and sisters does not simply stop at our borders, it is global. And I think of all of the strikes and the agitation and work put in by the unions in the 70s into the 80s to force that military dictatorship to shut down and bring about democracy in Brazil in 1985. I think about that now, especially as a member of the GREA and the importance and responsibility we have. It was a union fight then, it is the union's fight now, because unions fight for workers, and workers includes all of us. That's migrant workers, that's Black workers, that's queer workers, that is women workers, that is every single person who makes our community so absolutely great and keeps everything running and keeps us safe and fed and clothed and a roof over our heads. We often parrot a very common phrase at the GREA, right? It takes a village. It takes a village to raise a child. I would extend that, right? It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to defend a community. It takes a village to feed, to home, and to clothe. It takes a village to resist fascism. It will take a village to get Trump out. It will take a village to save our communities. So please go out, be a member of your village, join your village, fight for your village. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Kate Homewood. I'm also a member of the GREA. I work for Grand Rapids Public Schools at Buchanan Elementary. I am in love with that school and that community, and just like Noemi and Luke have both mentioned, a lot of the students at my school have also been greatly impacted by ICE. We've had families self-deporting. One of my, I know we're not supposed to have favorites, but one of my favorite little students, fourth grader, she works so hard and is so bright. Her dad was taken while he was grilling her birthday dinner in their backyard. And she came to school, not the next day, but the following day, because she didn't want to fall behind. So those are just the kinds of amazing students we have in our schools here in Grand Rapids. I'm also here to speak about our schools, our contract, a petition that our union is trying to get signatures on right now. And I want to tell you guys why it matters, especially for immigrant families. So at first glance, this petition is just procedural, right? Contract negotiations, who's at the table, how decisions are made, and whether the process is transparent or not. But as we look more closely, it's really about something deeper, which is who gets a voice in shaping our schools. And that question matters a great deal to anyone who is part of a school community. So in many school systems, immigrant families already face barriers to participation, including language differences, unfamiliarity with how school governance works, and limited access to information that can make it harder to engage as is. So when important decisions like bargaining units contracts are made behind closed doors, those barriers become even stronger. This petition calls for transparency, and it says that families should not be left guessing about their child's education, and that the community deserves to understand how decisions are being made. So that alone is significant. Because when information is hidden or hard to access, most families are excluded, and often those who are excluded are the ones who are newest to our systems. Transparency is not just about openness, it's also about access. This petition calls for negotiations to be led by people who actually know our schools and our students and our communities and the challenges that they face, not by outside lawyers who we pay almost $80,000 to kick the can down the road and take money away from the people who we're all here for, which is our students. And then there's the idea of community voice. This petition frames contract negotiations as something that should not involve just the administrators, but families and the broader community, and that's a very powerful shift that is long overdue in Grand Rapids Public Schools. For our immigrant families, being recognized as part of the community is not a small thing. It means that their experiences and their concerns and their priorities belong in the conversation. So now it's important to be clear, this petition does not guarantee specific outcomes. It doesn't promise more ESL teachers or interpreters or translation services or new programs. Those are separate decisions. But what it does do is create the conditions where those needs can actually be raised and considered. Because when negotiations are transparent, families can follow what's happening. When local voices are centered, lived experiences matter more. And when the community is included, more perspectives are brought to the table, and that is how change starts. This is about making sure that our schools and the decisions behind them belong to the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you to the Grand Rapids Education Association. They're building power. They're coming back fighting strong.
All right, y'all, we're gonna do a very quick chant and call back. I think y'all know this one. When immigrant rights are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
When workers' rights are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
When human rights are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
Thanks, everyone.
Again, this is Yvonne Diaz, Michigan Senate District 29 candidate, and I'm Tom Burke with the Stagehands Union, Local 26. Next, we'd like to invite Eduardo Montiel of the Grand Rapids Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, and he'll be introducing a special guest.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eduardo Montiel, and I'm the co-chair of the Grand Rapids Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. I know that's a mouthful. I didn't get to pick the name, but you know, we'll work with it. So I'm also the son of immigrants, which means that I grew up with identity issues. Growing up in America, I was never really accepted by the Americans, but I also didn't really fit in with Mexicans from Mexico. So I ended up culturally bilingual, but socially lost. However, being part of both worlds meant that I witnessed the second-class treatment of those who were not white, those who were deprived of the opportunity for a decent life, and the people who would reinforce this injustice were the police. This truth became clear to me in my adulthood when I tried to go off on my own, independent from my family, becoming an adult. In a community filled with injustice, I felt alone until I came across GRARPR, Grand Rapids Alliance. There was an organization dedicated to action, an organization who refused to wait for elected officials, Republican or Democrat, to sort things out and slow down the progress. A grassroots organization comprised entirely of working class individuals such as myself. Here in Grand Rapids, this organization is dedicated to realizing the demand for community control of the police. This means an elected board of civilians who oversees and controls every aspect of policing, including the hiring and firing. So the engine that makes this whole organization run is the families that we work with. The families who are directly impacted by police violence, who have been brutalized or have even lost loved ones to the police. Today, I'd like to welcome one of those families in particular. Andrika Cage, a working mother who lost her son, Samuel Sterling, to Michigan State Police. After more than 2 years, she's still waiting for justice to be served. But every day she gets up and fights for her son. So please welcome Andrika Cage.
Well, today I'm Andrika Cage. I'm Samuel Sterling's mom. I am the young black boy that passed away at the age of 25, that Officer Brian Keeley took his SUV and cut my son in half at Burger King. Since he's been gone, I've been fighting for 2 years. We went from the state that we were gonna get him convicted in the state, and the federal came up under the state and took him and gave the officer immunity. So now we back fighting with an appeal to fight and go back to state. Samuel is just not just a person. He's also my son. He was a father. He was a brother. He was a nephew. He was a cousin, and he was a good friend to everybody. The day I got that phone call that my son was taken from me, I had to go to the hospital and see my son split in two. And the only thing I seen was a bar trying to hold them together. And no mother should have to go through this. And because I see my son in two, I'm fighting, and I'm gonna fight to the end, to my last breath. That was my baby. That was the last of 4. It's hard to stand up here to tell everybody over and over again about my baby. Because when he was first born, he was premature, and he couldn't come home for 2 weeks. So the same way I seen him with all those things on his face, it's the same way he went out with all those things on his face. And I don't know what to tell anybody anymore. I just know my baby gone. He left 2 boys behind. He lost his daughter at the age of 10 days that he had to bury himself. So the cycle has not changed. He buried his daughter, and I had to bury my son. So I'm asking everybody, please help me in prayer, because that's the most anybody can do, because I have a God that I know is fighting for me. So if you see me out there fighting, stand out there with me, because that's what I'm doing. And these people behind me is helping me stand. And I'm grateful for every last one of them that's standing out there with me. Once again, my son's name is Samuel Sterling, and my name is Andrika Cage.
No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
Just one more story about why it's important for us to stand up and fight. Because while it may not be us or our family, if it happens to other people, it can happen to us. Next, we're gonna hear from Tom Niebuhr of the IWW and AFSCME 435 Public Employees Chapter Chair. Please give him a nice welcome.
I'm gonna try to not drop the mic here. There we go. Hello, my name is Tom Niebor. I am the chapter chair of AFSCME Local 43501 and a member of the Industrial Workers of the World. And I've been trying to find the answer to one question for the last 10 years. How do we fight back? How do we fight that thing that murders our children? How do we fight the institutions of money and power that run this nation and makes things as they are? How do we fight that which can take without asking? And through much trial and error, luck, a political mass movement led by Midwestern women, and an extreme amount of assistance from my peers, I have found an answer. Unions. Institutions that are made up of us workers for the sole purpose of protecting our collective interest. The rich have banks, political action committees, and LLCs. We have unions. Here is that union story. I work as a health inspector for the Ottawa County Department of Public Health. During the COVID epidemic, we maintained a mask mandate for students in schools to protect the public health of the people of West Michigan while a vaccine was still in the works for children. This was a very unpopular opinion with some people. During this time, one of my jobs was to call back community members that had left voicemail messages on the county COVID helpline. As you might imagine, there were some tense phone calls. This tension led to the rise of a right-wing political action group called Ottawa Impact. The main goal of Ottawa Impact was to take control of the county government and shape it according to Trumpist policies. One of these policies was to defund the health department. And we were not unionized yet. They fired the DEI team first. It was like the first month they were in office, a board of all-white commissioners fired the diversity, equity, and inclusion team. History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. They went after the head of the health department next, but they were unsuccessful at that. There is a law in Michigan that protects health officers of health departments from being fired without cause because the Flint water crisis would have been prevented if this law had been active at the time. This gave us time. There were no mass firings because the health officer was pulling focus, so we got together. My coworkers and I talked amongst ourselves, gathered enough of us to vote on a union, signed union cards, and then successfully voted for a union to bargain with. We are now Local 435 of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Go AFSCME! And just in time, too. This froze our wages so that when the budgets came up and Ottawa Impact tried to defund the health department, we were able to begin bargaining without losing anything in the meantime. So they tried to kill the union in its infancy. One of the most important things in any contract is binding arbitration. This part of a contract basically protects people from unethical firings. We argue with the county for 6 months of negotiations on this one issue because they don't want that in the contract. While this was happening, they gave all non-union employees at the health department a raise and a week's additional vacation. This is union busting 101. Offer concessions to the employees of the place that's unionizing that they'd never give if there wasn't a union unionizing. But we held the course, and we got a 2-year contract with binding arbitration, a 10% raise, and a week's additional vacation. And we got this because we had a professional contract negotiator from AFSCME that kicked ass and took names in those meetings. And then, a mass movement of people of Ottawa County voted out 3 of the Ottawa Impact members of office, and they lost their majority on the board. Now, I'd like to say that's where it ended, but as things go, it's never as easy as you think it's gonna be. We're in the middle of another union story now. We're getting close to negotiations this year, and it's gonna be a tough one. There's a mess of a wage study, ignored emails, board meetings, bilingual employees not being paid for interpreting on their other work time. History rhymes. But I've learned a lot, and I've held a lot of signs in the last few years that have said a lot of different things. Most of these things haven't come true yet, but the words on the signs we held at the union pickets are now in the union contract, and the employer has to abide by them. Unions bring power to the workers, and workers need to bring power to the unions. And there's much work to be done yet. Solidarity!
As we can see, when workers organize, there's nothing that they can't fight against. Next, I'd love to introduce my friend, community leader, activist, and candidate for Michigan's 80th House District. Please welcome Lily Chang Schulting.
I don't like to be attached. So, yeah, I am Lily Chang Schulting, and I'm running for state representative in Michigan House District 80. And I want to ask you a question first. How many of you are angry, or are you tired, not just of Trump, of fascism, of oligarchy, even local oligarchy? How many of you are tired of the racist targeting of our neighbors? Yeah? Yeah. So, thank you. And to that I say that in my district race, House District 80, that I am Trump's worst nightmare. Yeah. I'm actually an immigrant woman of color. I don't know if I need to add that part, but yeah. And I have been a long-time proven activist and community organizer for over a decade in this community. And a lot of people know me for my work as a community organizer, a change maker essentially, because it is so rare to lead a grassroots movement and actually win with real major systemic change. And we did that. In 2018, I led this movement, a disability rights movement, when special education schools were being downsized. And we won within the month after we went public, and all the 21 superintendents had to have an emergency meeting by the end of the month. And as a result, there was an independent investigation. There was all the special ed schools got the management changed from one of the local school districts to all of Kent County, which then provided better funding, better management. And that's what we want. We want real change. Yeah. And so in the process, I think one thing we need of all our leaders in all of the different areas is bravery. It was not easy. I mean, what people don't know is when you take on the top power structure, they're going to come at you with everything you have. I mean, to this very day, in politics, I still have the highest power structure coming after me. And, but you know, it's something we do. It shows who we are. We will fight for the people. We will fight for those who are the most vulnerable. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the higher power structure took my son, who previously had 20 hours of summer school, and by the way, he's 21 and still nonverbal and autistic. And they completely deny him all his summer school hours in the summer of 2018. But because we won, by 2019 it was restored. And that's one way of attacking me. There's others, obviously, that I will not share. But you know, that's what we need, is we need leaders in all areas who are profiles in courage. When the top power structure comes and attacks you, that can you stand strong? So I never share any of my stories with my husband, so don't tell him all this stuff because he would like make me stay home or something. But that is one way of accomplishing change. And here's another way, and it's far more important. Well, it's not more important, but it's crucial. I know a lot of people say, oh, let's not get involved in elections and candidates. That's exactly what you have to do. Because a Democratic primary is when you get to choose the most progressive candidates, but the candidates who are truly brave for the people. And you cannot shy away from that. I mean, you have to step up, because if you don't step up for the candidates that put their lives on the line, then nobody will be helping. And by the way, when we step up not, we're not just saying that we're going to step up. Hopefully we have a track record of stepping up, and that's what we will do in the Democratic primary. So it's so important for you to get involved. You know, I am running in a Democratic primary against 2 status quo candidates. And what does that mean? I don't think they will accomplish change. They don't have a track record of accomplishing change, but we will. And same with Ivan Diaz, and same with Abdul, who you will hear from. So this is why it's important. So do you know when the Democratic primary is? August 4th. Yes, and then when does absentee ballots come out? End of June, yes. So I hope that you will get involved. You will tell all your friends who live in these districts to vote absentee or by August 4th. And yeah, and that's how we will accomplish change together. Thank you.
I'd like to now ask all the speakers to come and join us. Where's my teachers? You know, I used to be a school custodian, right? Yep. All right, so our next speaker is going to be my friend and comrade from IATSE Local 26, Josh Roskamp. Josh is our business agent. He's one terrific negotiator, so if you ever need to get something out of him, you better be prepared. We've done really great things with the Stagehands Union since Josh has been the business agent. We got contracts that had a 15% and 4% and 4% raise. I've never seen anyone else do that. We've gotten to know all of you, all of our other brothers and sisters and kinfolk from the social movements and from the labor unions in this city. And we've met with many of the politicians to try to negotiate with them. So I thought it was really important to have Josh welcome Abdul. So please welcome Josh. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. Good evening, everyone. My name is Josh Roskamp. I am here as the business agent for IATSE Local 26 and representing many facets of organized labor. We have watched the boss do all kinds of things to pit oppressed peoples and workers against each other when we are on the same team. However, we fight each other when we need to work together to raise each other to the tables where the food is at, not just fighting each other for the crumbs where the food is prepared. Also, it's way past time we work with politicians who have bold plans to create living wages and understand that no one needs to live in poverty. Politicians who recognize it takes us all to create a productive society. Politicians who have seen the politicians go along to get along and recognize that doesn't work anymore. They need to be here for everybody, not just their designated donors. It's time all labor everywhere work with all oppressed nationalities to win the numbers game. It's time we prove we care for our neighbors more than celebrity. I want to leave you with some additions to a famous quote, which a few people have already brought up today. It takes a village to raise a child. Well, it's past time we recognize it takes us all to balance the world. And we lift our neighbors, and they will lift theirs, and so on. Before long, we can all stand tall together. These are akin to so many of the beliefs we at Local 26 share with Abdul El-Sayed. That is why I'm proud to announce here we have endorsed him, and we are all happy to welcome Abdul El-Sayed to the microphone.
All right, good evening, Grand Rapids. All right, friends, let's remind them what we want. We want money out of? Money in your? Medicare for? Let's make sure everybody hears it. Money out of? Money in your? Medicare for? All right, well, I must be in Grand Rapids, Fountain Street Church. Y'all, happy Mayday. I want to reflect a moment on what Mayday is all about. It's about recognizing that the only thing we have is each other. That solidarity is what allows all of us who stare at the wrong end of a system of injustice, be it because of the circumstances of our labor, the color of our skin, where we grew up, who we love, how we identify, our gender. That solidarity together is how we fight for the things we need and deserve. And on this May Day, we need to talk about what it looks like to build together. Whether we're talking about big cities like Detroit and Grand Rapids, small towns, places like Escanaba or Three Rivers, places all over, up and down the state, people coming together to build what we need and deserve. This May Day is about reminding us that a better world is possible if we're willing to grab hands and go get it together. Now, my name is Abdul El-Sayed. It's actually Abdurrahman Muhammad Sayed. There's a lot of throat in that name if you haven't heard. They tell me I'm not supposed to run for office. My name is too long. It is too foreign. The color of my skin is too dark. My family comes from the wrong place, and apparently I pray the wrong way. But when they tell me that, I remind them that this movement is not about me, not about my name, not about where my family comes from, not about how I pray. This movement is about you. When you run for office, people like to pick you apart and dissect you, splay you out on a table and figure out what you're made of. And sometimes the cuts hurt. But the thing about it is, while everybody is looking at me, I want to tell you what I see. Because night in and night out, day in and day out, I get to travel up and down this incredible state. I get to go all over and meet folks from all kinds of walks of life. I get to see you. I get to watch you and hear you and understand you and recognize what it is that brings you out today, but also brings you to each other. And what I tell you is I see in front of me a beautiful cornucopia that makes this state what it is. People coming together not despite, but because of their differences. Recognizing that the completeness we seek, we can't seek in ourselves alone, but we seek it in each other. That when one person in this state goes without the housing they need, it's a function of a far larger problem, and it's going to be all of us working together to get housing for all of us. That when one of us is unfairly automated out or offshored out of a job, that is a challenge that all together, and it is the dignity of a job that brings us together to fight for the jobs that all of us need and deserve. That when one person can't see a doctor when they get sick, in fact, it's a function of a healthcare system that we've allowed to get built for the richest and most powerful. CEOs making $18 million a year while the rest of us have to pay, what, $4,000, $5,000 in a deductible just to get the healthcare we thought we paid for every single paycheck already. And that if any of us can't see a doctor, that means all of us are less healthy for it. I see folks from all walks of life who recognize that while some of us may be at higher risk because of the illegal activities of ICE, that actually all of us are less safe because of the illegal activities of ICE. Because ICE is not about immigration. ICE is not about the southern border. ICE is about the government weaponizing itself against its own constraints and the rule of law. ICE is about normalizing the use of government thugs on your streets so that you stop paying attention to what it is they're trying to stop you from doing. ICE is not about keeping us safe. ICE is about keeping the people in power safe from the people. And when I look out, I see people who send their kids to schools that could be so much better. I see people struggling for the health care they need and deserve. I see folks who deserve to earn a living wage for a hard day's work. And I see people who paid their taxes only to have their government misappropriate those tax dollars to backstop apartheid or genocide or war we should not be fighting. And I see people who recognize that none of these problems are insurmountable. That in fact, all of these problems are solvable. And that we have the solution already in and amongst us in each other. If only we had the courage to grasp it. Now, when I set out to run for office, I remember the first time I was 32, never run for office in my whole life. I had no clue what I was doing. I had some bad advice from a former president at my college graduation telling me I should run for office. I took it a little too seriously. I said, you know, I'm going to go big or go home. I went big, and then I went home. But across that campaign, we built a community. I saw what was possible when you can build a bridge between people who've been told that they are one another's problem. Because it turns out that if you go to poor or working or retired people in places like Flint or Benton Harbor or Detroit, or poor or working or retired people in places like Marquette or Munising, they say the same things. They even use the same language. It just shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be this hard to afford a second bag of groceries. It shouldn't be this hard to pay my rent or my mortgage. It should not be this hard to see a doctor in the richest, most powerful country in the whole world. It shouldn't be this hard to pay my taxes and believe that that money is going to be used on me rather than against them. It shouldn't be this hard. And it was a wild thing. For a year and a half, I traveled up and down the state hearing the same things from people who'd been told by their politicians that the reason they didn't have was because of somebody else somewhere else in the state. You go to a place like Detroit, and folks up north will point and, well, the reason we don't have is because of those folks in Detroit. Folks in the cities tell you, well, the reason we don't have is because of those folks up north. And it turns out the reason none of us have is because of folks in Lansing and DC. So for 18 months, I got this incredible opportunity to move up and down my state, to get to see all of you in your own communities, to listen to the words that you shared. And I gotta tell you, I didn't study to be a politician. That was not part of my life's plan. I wanted to be a doctor, and there's something beautiful about medicine that is the greatest gift that people give you, is the gift of their vulnerability with the belief that you could do something about it. And the best part about being a doctor is that for a moment, you get to be that person that somebody shares something with that they might not tell anyone else. And they trust you to be able to make it better. And your job is to bring empathy, a listening ear, and the truth. And to work with them around what we can do to forge purpose out of their pain. And in politics, at best, that's what I get the opportunity to do. So many of you all over the state have given me the gift of sharing your experiences with me. And I carry that gift as a burden with the idea that you don't tell me this because you want to tell me about it. You tell me this because you hope maybe I can do something about it. That is a huge burden. But it's a burden that we carry together. And for 18 months, I got to do this, and then the race ended. For 8 years, I was not involved in politics. I went back to public health, did other things with my life, but I knew that if we had the opportunity to do it again, we were going to do it bigger, we were going to do it bolder, and we were going to lead with the honesty and integrity that was the hallmark of that 2018 campaign, and that this time around, we were going to build a big enough movement that would not only take us to victory, but would ignite something that would allow us to sow our victory into public policy in this country. Now, a year into this campaign, I've had the privilege of traveling this state once more, and there's something crazy about this. When I ran last time, I said this thing I don't think people were quite ready for, and that's that Donald Trump is not himself the disease of our politics. Donald Trump is just the worst symptom of the disease of our politics. That the disease is the system that allows big corporations, billionaires, special interests to buy and sell politicians in ways that leave them rigging the system against us. We pay more for the stuff we gotta buy, get paid less for the work we do, and watch our money get misappropriated abroad rather than spent here on our own kids. And 8 years on, those problems have just gotten more acute. The frustrations have gotten more intense. The pain is all the more real. We're living in a moment in which it is difficult to afford high past anything. You fill up your gas for $5 a gallon because your tax dollars got used in a war that didn't need to be fought. For 8 years, we have failed to build the housing that we need, and what's worse is we've allowed big corporations and big tech to speculate on the housing we should be able to afford. We've watched as big corporations have throttled each other up in a game of monopoly in a way that has been about helping them to control every single market that they're a part of. We just watched an airline company shut down just 2 days ago. Why? Well, because it's getting harder to compete in an economy where there's only room for 2 or 3. That is true whether you're talking about an airline. That is true whether you're talking about the manufacturer of the phone that sits in your pocket. It is true whether you're talking about the carrier on that phone. It is true when you're talking about the meat you buy at the grocery store or what grocery store you can even go to. It is true when you think about where you can go and get health care in your own community. It is true in every part of our lives. And then they use big tech algorithms to argue that they're not colluding, even though those algorithms are colluding in the background just simply to ratchet our prices higher and higher. And what makes it even worse is that those same corporations realize that for the privilege of owning monopolies or oligopolies on our lives, being able to pick our pocket, all they got to do is toss a couple $1,000s to each of the folks who are running for office, and they'll know that they'll never actually be regulated on. And here's the thing about it. We all know Republicans are playing that game, but what's so frustrating is that too many Democrats are playing that game too. And then we wonder, where are the politicians with the bold ideas? Well, it turns out there are no bold ideas when a corporation buys your voice box and tells you you can't have bold ideas because it might mean that that bold idea comes at the cost of their bottom line. I know I'm in a church, so I'm going to choose my language sparingly. But F your bottom line. F your bottom line if it means people can't have health care. Give me. We have an opportunity to think differently. And in the year that I've been able to travel up and down the state, 90 different cities that I've had the privilege of visiting, 350 public events. When your name's Abdul, you go everywhere, you talk to everybody. I've gotten to see folks in their living rooms, in their VFW halls, in their churches. I've got to meet them and talk to them. I've got to see what it is that they want and they need. And now is a different time. It is a different time. People are tired of the status quo. They are tired of fighting not to lose rather than fighting to actually win. They are tired of being told what they cannot have by a corporation and they should not fight for by the corporation's favorite politician. They are sick and tired of an economy that is built to squeeze them out, to render yet one more billion for an oligarch. They are tired of being told that the only value they have is as a dollar or a cent. They are sick and tired of knowing that they work harder to get less in the richest, most powerful country in the world, and then being told that this is the sum total of the American dream. We have an opportunity and a reminder this Mayday that we are the solution to our problems. It is us building together, growing together, reaching arms together, clasping hands with somebody we may not know or even understand, recognizing that that person feels the same emotions when they look their kid in the eye. I gotta tell you, for me, it's personal. I got 2 little girls. The last time I ran, we gave birth to our first, my wife gave birth to our first. I was there for moral support. I played another role too, but she gave birth to our first baby girl. And I was not ready to become a dad. There are all kinds of emotions that you get the first time you look your flesh and blood in the eye. And coming out of that campaign, we now have 2 little girls. They're 8 and 3. And I think a lot about the world they're growing up in. My 3-year-old is blissfully ignorant to what I do every day. Honestly, it's the best. She's the one person in my life who doesn't ask me about the race. But don't we all want our children to have the privilege of being blissfully ignorant? And in having my own kids, I found a part of my heart I didn't know existed. Because in looking at this other person who sits outside of me, I found all of my hopes and all of my fears in that person. And I know that's the feeling that everybody has when they look their kid or grandkid in the eye. I know that's the feeling we have when we look our loved ones in the eye. The question of not what's good for me, but what is befitting of you? With all your innocence and all your hope, what do you deserve in this world? And are you getting that? And it's that motivation that I think is the least common denominator of the human experience. And what it should teach you is that if all of us have that same set of emotions, that what would it look like for us? What would it feel like for us to build a politics centered around that? Rather than the greed of a big corporation or a billionaire, what would it look like to build a healthcare system centered on that note that no matter what, if something were to happen to our loved one, we would want the best care for them? What would that health care system look like? I think it'd look like Medicare for all. What would it look like if even our families had been here for generations and generations? We understood what it might feel like for an immigrant mother to be separated from her children and have to ask, who's going to care for you now? What would our immigration system look like? I think it would mean we would probably abolish ICE. What would it mean for us to recognize that those little girls who died at the edge of an American bomb at a girls' school in Iran, that those little girls looked at their parents when they left for school with the same exact set of emotions that my daughters look at me and I look at them? What would it mean for us to dignify that human experience the same way we dignify ours? Maybe it would mean that rather than being told by weapons manufacturers or AIPAC that the best use of our tax dollars is to backstop a foreign government, maybe it would mean that we'd spend that money here, dignifying our kids here, investing in their schools here and their healthcare here. What would it mean if we saw our own children in the children of parents struggling just to make ends meet, working 2 jobs and going without the time that they want with those children because they have to provide the basic things those children need? Maybe we would build an economy centered around people rather than corporations, an economy that gave every single worker in every single sector access to a union. Maybe we would build an economy where corporations didn't get to dictate the terms of engagement, but instead the people dictated the terms of engagement. We can have those things. We really can, but we can't do it alone. We can only do it together. And I know I am an unlikely vessel for this message. I am not supposed to be here standing and running for office. I have the wrong name. I'm not supposed to be able to run for or win an election. I understand all of that. But I also understand that maybe by virtue of being someone who's been told again and again and again how I do not belong, been thrown under the bus, that I've spent enough time with all the people under the bus with me, realizing that it's a lot better to be on the bus than under the bus. And this campaign is not about me. This campaign is about you. Because in room after room after room after room, across 350 places all over this state, I've had the opportunity to look you in the eye, to understand what it is that you desire for yourself and your kids and your grandkids. And it is us centering that, building together around that, reaching across the divides they tell us we cannot breach around that, breaking down barriers of race and faith and ethnicity and socioeconomic status and sexual orientation and gender identity and geography to build together what we cannot have alone. That is the most important feature of our politics. That is what our democracy was intended to help us do in the first place. That is what politics should be about. And so I'm not asking for you to support me. I'm asking for you to support each other. And if this campaign has the opportunity to win, I am asking you, do not put me in a seat in DC and leave me there. I am asking you to continue to join forces together, because the real win is not about a Senate seat. It is about what we make that Senate seat do for the future that we want to build for each other and our kids and our grandkids. It is about building. It is about building an America where every single person in this country gets the guaranteed health care that they need and deserve through Medicare for all. It is about building an America where instead of spending $185 billion on ICE to tear apart families, we are invested in our kids and their schools, in our homes, so we can bring families together. It is about building an economy where every single worker has the right to a union, where we finally tax billionaires their wealth, because guess what? You already won capitalism. Maybe the rest of us can get to play. It is about building schools that dignify our children's minds rather than decrepit buildings where we store them every single day without the future of an economy they actually can work in. It is about finally recognizing that in this country we have to take our democracy back from the corporations who try to tell us what we cannot have. It is about building together to bring ourselves back into that democracy. Now look, we got 3 months left. That's not a lot of time. But I also know this, it's not about how much time you have, it is about how much of yourself you are willing to put into your time, how much you are willing to put into one another. So leaving here today, my ask of you is simple. Build together with people who are unlikely allies. All you who are here on a Saturday night, God bless you, but most people don't come to churches on Saturday nights to listen to politicians. But you came. And you came for each other. And I know you know 5, 10 people who need housing, who need health care, whose kids need a good school, who are at risk because of ICE or a war we should not be fighting. I know you know those people. So I'm going to ask you tonight, reach out to them. Some of them may agree with you politically, some of them may not. But reach out to them because you share that foundational humanity. I don't care how you voted in 2024, you get that same feeling when you look your kids in the eye. I think it is time for us, rather than to appeal to people about what was wrong in the past, about what could be good and right about the future. So reach out. Reach out with the hope of a future we could build together. Reach out with the optimism that what unites us is bigger than what divides us. Reach out with the recognition that we really can have nice things, but we can only do it together. And for every day from here until August 4th and again on November 3rd, I am asking you, put yourself in your time. Because all that we hope for, all that we deserve is on the line. And our kids will ask us what we did in this moment. History will ask us what we did in this moment. And I know I want to tell my kids and my grandkids that I got the opportunity to work alongside some of the best people I ever met, to build a future befitting of them, their kids, and all of our kids, and that you get to bear the fruit of that future. That future is worth fighting for, and friends, we're gonna fight that fight together. My name is Abdul Al-Sayed. I am running for U.S. Senate. I hope I can earn your support. Thank you so much. Thank you.